Hello folks, we are still here and I'm still here. It's time for us to get into Digital Wednesday as today we focus on digital-based careers on the continent. I'm really excited to be joined by a special guest, but before we get into that, let me just set the scene a little bit. Now, because we live in a digital age, it's important for us to know what trends are developing so that, of course, we're always up to speed. Now, as smartphones and data become more affordable and more people become digitally literate, the growth of digital livelihoods across the continent is skyrocketing. Now, additionally, traditional jobs are becoming scarcer in increasingly competitive job markets, and the digital economy offers opportunities to support the livelihoods of not just entrepreneurial individuals, but also professionals who are seeking to provide services to new customers in new ways. So, talking about what digital careers exist is CEO of Versecom Limited, Timilehin Odusina. Hello, good morning. How are you?
Thank you.
You look like a proper Alte millennial. I have to say. I just need to put that out there. How are you today?
Very fine, thank you.
Wonderful. Let's get straight into it. Now, let's talk about job creation in the digital economy. What are some of the trends that we've seen develop over the past couple of years?
So it's been interesting over the last decade or so in Africa, in Nigeria, and in the world. Especially, we've seen a growth in programmers, but more importantly is the product developers themselves, right? The ability to take what you would have considered a small business and give it the ability to scale using technology has been one of the most interesting things. How do you get all the way from programming all the way to product build, marketing, and all of that? The fact that tech allows me to reach a global market from a very small scale has meant that you've seen smaller and smaller teams work very decentralized and then scale. You've seen that with Facebook, with Instagram, and the rest of them, where you hear that they started with such a small team and were able to do a lot of things. Outside of that, now because of the way scale has happened, and we've started to see a growth back in terms of what I would like to say in the art. Like if you go back 600 years, where art was more of the more valued trade, unlike science that we have now in the industrial age, you've seen a lot more people. Have you seen the resurgence in the fashion industry in Nigeria, in the music industry in Nigeria? I am more traditional in terms of tech, the business that we do. So you see that in terms of the growth of AI, that's when you call machine learning or infrastructure development. So yes, it's opened up what is possible in terms of what I, as a young millennial, can do and build a team quickly. Unlike what we had 20, 30 years ago, where large organizations typically determine what the landscape of job creation was like.
And when we look at especially the Nigerian job market, I think there's something that I'm not sure whether it was intentional, maybe you can school me on this, or whether it's something that happened to happen as a coincidence. I don't think anybody could have predicted that Nigeria would have been a hub, a tech hub, in this era. You have coding happening, you have developing happening, you have investment in all of those sectors happening, and the world is looking towards young Nigerian professionals. You look at Yaba, for example, and what a tech hub has become. Is this something that you feel has been an intentional sort of job creation mechanism, or how did we end up with such a massive digital economy employing so many young people in Nigeria?
I think it's a little bit of both, right? Predicting the future is increasingly harder. We've seen people attempt it all over, all through the years. Nobody could have predicted the smartphone or the way we live life today, right? It's very difficult. But if you go back 10 years and you compare us to the landscape in Africa, you look at Nairobi, Kenya, you look at Cape Town, you look at Joburg, right? Nigeria was kind of slow, or Lagos itself was kind of slow compared to the rest of them. I think for the first time this year, 2019, Nigeria overtook South Africa in terms of pulling investment fund on the continent. But so I think that was it was kind of slow. It was random. But I like to think that the change in the economy in 2015 kind of helped. It allowed some people to become a little bit more boisterous in the ability to take the chances that they were given, because of the way the economy was. Yes, there's also been some intentionality from the political side. There's been a little bit more political will. Like Inye likes to say, for every generational set in the tech space, they've also tried to give a little bit more to the next generation that comes in. And so as this generation becomes a little bit more successful, they open the path or open the way to let the next generation come through. So I think it's a little bit of both, right? And that's because, again, it's how the opportunities flow, right? If you look at it, 5-6 years ago, there was a lot of things when it came to e-commerce, and then we had fintech and trying to grow the financial literacy world of it. And when with the policies that we are seeing in agriculture over the last 3 years, we've seen a lot of growth in the agri-tech space. I would predict that there will be a lot of growth in the financial space, not necessarily banking, but in the actual financial space with the new financial bill that has been passed, for accountants and services building. But that's, you have to understand, I don't know if the government thought about this when they thought about that, but that
right.
is how...
Sometimes it's how people react to the new
opportunities that exist. So that's, I would say it's been a little bit of both, taking opportunities as they come.
And earlier you mentioned AI, and that's something we really need to talk about when we're talking about, careers in the digital economy, because generally people are looking at AI right now and feel that it's the enemy. There's so much concern about, moving into a world that's so tech-centric because, of course, people are going to lose jobs in certain industries. Now, let's look at it from an optimistic angle. What are some of the jobs that are being created, specifically in the digital economy, by the developments that are arising? For example, something like Uber, it has obviously created entrepreneurs overnight, especially here on the African continent. So what are some of the opportunities?
So what AI is poised to do is the ability to give more time to the creative nature of the human mind, the ability to be instinctively creative, right? So what AI does is just a really smart computer. You give it the problem to solve, and it helps you solve them or helps you automate them over a quick period of time. Within the more core tech place, we like to call it machine learning, the ability for the machine to learn what the human has done over time.
And this is what scares us. This is what we're like, no, I want my job. Why should a machine do it?
But imagine a world where art is a little bit more liberal. So you have to understand, I'm a core science person at core, but I do understand that being a sculptor or a painter or thinking about this or inspiring people is critical to what the humankind will do. We've needed to do a lot of industrialization and do it by hand, right? Because when you talk about AI, it's AI and robotics in combination, right? So when you talk about
throwing forth industrial revolution in there as well.
Right, when you look at Uber, or you look at Lyft, or you look at what Google is doing with Wyoming, in Phoenix, where they want to use self-driving cars as their cabs. Like, not just eliminate, so they created entrepreneurs overnight, but they're also predicting over the next 10 years they're going to wipe out all of those entrepreneurs. But what I would like to believe is that the world population is estimated to peak at 12 billion. Once we hit 12 billion, we're no longer going to grow, we're going to stabilize as a species. What is going to happen is that we're going to have more opportunities to do other things that make us happy. At the end of the day, technology's aim is to make us happy. We'll move some of the more rigorous hard work to the computers, and then have more time for us to live more wholesome lives, right? To do more of the things that we would rather do in terms of the creativity, and determine the path that works for us. Give the computer the more rudimentary stuff to do.
But it's still a difficult conversation to have because, so for example, I have my niece. She's 16, so we're at that stage where we need to be serious about our conversations about careers. What subjects are we focusing on? What universities are we targeting, and so forth. But even I, as a millennial, I still feel like there's a generational gap because I don't want to limit this young girl because there's so many new careers available to her that were never available in my time. So what would you say is the factor that should guide us at the moment, especially if we're people who are trying to ensure that our careers adapt? For example, we in television have learned very quickly that, if you're not on digital, forget about it, it's not going to work. So, what is the guideline? Because people also just throw in, digital, it's a buzzword. Yes. How do we practically, infuse the future of digital economy into our careers?
First of all, I would like to say the way to implement that effectively is to look at it from a point of view of how do I go global, right? So that's the first thing. What digital has done for us more than any other thing is the ability to think outside of the boundaries of our geographical boundaries. Typically, a Dangote, for instance, which is an industrialist, largely thinks about the Nigerian market from a geographical point of view, and then starts to worry about trade from that point of view, as a function of how Nigeria as a country determines trade. For Facebook, you didn't need to worry so much about what Nigeria's trade laws were with America. It didn't matter. The internet allows for that global reach. Yes, there are countries that have been able to stifle that, but that's what you need to start to think about. But from a predictive point of view, again, we're about millennials, and when I think back at my time, I studied chemical engineering, right? When I was growing up, being a doctor or an engineer of some sort was what it was. When I was choosing chemical engineering, I was thinking about the oil sector. In my class of about 70, only 2 people are working in the oil sector. Chemical engineering is about manufacturing. Maybe 10 people are working in manufacturing put together.
Wow.
The rest of us are in some form of digital or the other.
Incredible.
So to predict to predict what the next 5 years will be, even for someone of my age, saying looking to change careers, is typically difficult. But what I like to say, and I've heard a couple of people say this, the same thing, is the ability to balance social skills. So whether it be economics or it be sociology, psychology, with a little bit of science, right, is what you would need. It to be that rounded person, right? One of the typical mantra of a startup is that everybody does everything, right? Because it doesn't matter. So you need a little bit of everything. So so what I think the college system should be more adapting to is building someone that can learn and someone that can be very adaptive, right? So the course study should be more broad in terms of giving you a basis to live in a future that is ever growing and ever adapting. The world is racing at the speed of light. I cannot predict what next 5 years will be. Talk more of telling you what you should be doing in the next 5 years. Yes, there will be some jobs in manufacturing. There will be some jobs there. There will be some jobs. There will be a lot of jobs in programming. We do know that. But in what direction would those jobs be? For instance, gaming has changed the way we are looking at the future. Cloud has become something very different with what Stadia is going to be doing, right? AR and VR, because gaming is now leading that path. It's going to set the stage for what programming will be like. If you are doing interactives, lifestyle, or any form of business right now, AR and VR will be the way you're going to chart that course. Now, that is my prediction in 2020. I don't know what technologies will come in 2022.
Right? Somebody's working on something somewhere. Now, very quickly before we go, we need to round up, but I just want to touch on scaling, because that was a very central point that you mentioned at the beginning of this interview. And when we speak of scaling up in Africa, the barriers are, we have so many more barriers than the rest of the world. What are some of those barriers and possibly, ways to overcome the massive barriers? You look at companies like Jumia, for example, which had the potential to be, an e-commerce platform with an impressive reach. However, scaling was the one thing that that interfered with that process. So with the digital economy and scaling, I know we say think global. Is it really that easy?
So what we have to understand is, at the end of the day, like I said, digital is just a tool. It's not the solution. There are a lot of other tools that used to be there. Commerce is driven largely by logistics, right? Go back 1,000 years, right? When ships came was when they could trade transcontinental. When trains came was when trading even within a continent became really fast. Right? If you do not figure out how the barriers for transcontinental trade, physical trade works, it doesn't matter what Jumia sells to me online. If they cannot get it to me either by the sea or by land, I have not bought anything. Payment comes after. We'll figure out payment after that. So I think that's the one problem. Second, has to be culture. I've had the opportunities of relating with other entrepreneurs across the African scape, from the east to the north. North was actually very interesting for me, right? Is that we are so much in our own individual bubbles that there's not been a proper cultural mix like they have in Europe or in the US. US is a lot easier because it's a single country, but it's a continent, to be honest. While in Europe, the borders are so open that allows an average European has been to 3 or 4 countries. What that does is that you know a little bit of them. Meeting the Kenyans was eye-opening. Meeting the Moroccans for me was, I did not realize how much we had in common, right, until I started to meet with them. And so culture for me, and then trade in terms of logistics, ability to move those goods around, will be the fundamental basis of making Africa global, at least from a continental point of view.
Wonderful. And of course, the digital economy being a tool that we now use to enhance that. Timmy, this has been dope. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation. You're so knowledgeable. I've taken a lot away from this. Thank you so much. That's Timilehin Odusina of Versecom. Make sure you check him out. He knows his onions. To watch more videos just like this, make sure you subscribe right here. And of course, check out more videos right here.